Thank you very much for this important question. If I were coming up with a list of things to do to advance the cause of freedom in Afghanistan, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, principled engagement with the Taliban at the moment would be very low down the list. I would go back to some of the things that Zulmayjan was listing for trying to ensure a cohesive and effective democratic opposition. I'd be going back to the things which I was pointing towards, effective mobilization against the Taliban. I would be coming up with things like, for example, again, I was very much taken by some of the points that the Zia Siraj made at the start about the Taliban are legitimizing their rule and intimidating anybody considering standing against it by propagating a version of Islam which is very different from what most non-Taliban scholars of Islam recognize. So challenging that effectively would be high on the list. The low down on the list of things to do is engagement with the Taliban. One of the reasons that I say that it is a low priority is this somehow principled engagement with the Taliban is that one of the characteristics of the Taliban movement has been its cohesiveness, its discipline, and its consistent use of the principle which they called Etat-ba-Amir, that the ultimate authority, with authority going down to the lowest level of detail, rests with their Amir al-Mu'mineen, and that if, for example, you were to try and plot some kind of meeting between, say, civil society and representatives of the Taliban movement, wherever you held it, ultimately, as long as that the Taliban state is in place and the principle of Etat-ba-Amir prevails, the best you could hope for is that whoever the Taliban put into the room, they would ultimately be there as a spokesperson for the Amir Haibatullah, that they or a messenger who could note down messages and deliver them to Kandahar. I say Kandahar, not Kabul. But now, 4.5 years into Taliban rule, much of the opacity that I talk about has had to fall away because they have been practically ruling. We know they are fully committed to gender apartheid. And the idea that principled engagement with them is going to reveal anything new or change that, I find frankly ridiculous. Some engagement, of course, is necessary for now. In particular, states in the region and more broadly have got issues that they have to deal with, which are, you can say, day-to-day issues that pertain to Afghanistan, and only the state actor, the de facto rulers, can deal with them. For example, if some country wants to deport Afghans who they consider not entitled to stay in their country, there's no good them talking with the democratic opposition, and we might try to tell them it's a bad idea doing this. They will have to talk with the Taliban authorities. If the Iranians want to address issues of water rights on the Helmand River, they have to deal with the Taliban. Now that's pragmatic day-to-day engagement has to take place. Another form of political engagement we know does happen, but it doesn't happen, announced and in big conferences. It's with the dissenting voices inside the Taliban who cannot dissent openly, or otherwise they lose their position, they lose their effectiveness. But they do exist. There is some sense in them being involved in the kind of the question you put for this panel about envisaging a future Afghanistan. Some elements of the Taliban do not have the courage to break with their leadership, but they can envisage an Afghanistan beyond the current totalitarian system. Perhaps it's worth speaking to them. I personally, if I were prioritizing engagement with the Taliban, I would say put it on hold until mobilization by inside the democratic elements of Afghan society and changes in the stance of the regional actors put the Taliban in a position where essentially they realize they can no longer hold onto their monopoly of power. Then suddenly engagement with the Taliban starts to become relevant. Until then, it is largely irrelevant. And I would say, I mean, for this, to some extent, one can think of the dilemma that the Ukrainians are facing at the moment. They're under immense pressure to engage with the Russians. They sort of have to go along with that because they feel that they would face adverse political consequences if they didn't do it. But ultimately, they say as long as the other party, essentially, the Amir al-Momineen of Russia, is committed to pursuing the war, they say our engagement can achieve nothing. Currently, that is the position on engagement with the Taliban.